welcome. This is the panel of the ILO, the International Labour Organization. The panel will take place and very likely will use two languages intensively, English and Spanish. So I invite participants who only speak one of the two to be ready. It's a pleasure to have you. This is the campus of the ILO here, as you noticed in the last days, the International Training Center of the ILO. And we have been our own team here at the ITC ILO, managing the organization of the conference. And it's a pleasure to have a space to talk about what the ILO does in terms of evaluation. So all of us, we know one thing in life is we have 24 hours a day. Yes? Regardless how much wealth you possess, this is a reality. 24 hours a day. 8 hours to work, 8 hours to play, and 8 hours to sleep. Is this the reality today? Not really, huh? We're always connected to work with smartphone and computers. The majority of us, at least I hope here, are entitled with at least one day off a week. Yes, you confirm. And you have right for some vacations every year. Yes. In fact, these rights dates back from 1919. So they claim to have a day divided into 3 blocks of 8 hours. 8 hours of work, of play, and 8 hours of sleep. Basically gave birth to the first International Labour Convention, Convention 1, on hours of work in industry. So 1919, yes, this is more than 100 years ago. And yes, the International Labour Organization, I think, is the oldest UN agencies. It preceded the UN. So, but how this first convention, designed and voted in 1919, was established, and how the others International Labour Convention that came after were also designed and established. Is this, you think, the product of governments? Yes, yes, but partly yes. These conventions are the product of social dialogue. What is social dialogue? You will hear about social dialogue through this panel. Social dialogue refers to all negotiation, consultations, and exchanges between government, workers, and employers' organization. So the adoption of International Labour Convention is the result of this social dialogue at the global level. And this takes place within the umbrella of the International Labour Organization. The ILO promotes decent work. We all know there is a SDG 8 on decent work. It's in the middle. And for us, we think it's a middle for some reason because it intersects with all other SDGs. We were discussing this morning. There's an SDG about reduction of poverty. We believe if you want to reduce poverty, you need to create jobs. So we see it as the core. Maybe we are a bit biased because we work for the ILO or for constituents organization. So these actors, we call them our tripartite constituents, governments, workers, and employers. They are the one basically who design these international labor standards, also programs, policies, projects. And for us, we know that if you participate in the design of something, you should also participate in the evaluation, no? So this is what we will discuss today with this panel and see how ILO constituents engage, of course, in the creation of these policies, programs, and projects, but also in the evaluation. And we will see some story will be pink, some story may not be pink. We have here panelists from different countries. But before we go to them, we'll have a crash course with Patricia Vidal Hurtado from the ILO Evaluation Office. She will explain us in 10 minutes, yes, she can do, how the ILO supports the constituents in terms of engaging them in evaluation. And then we'll ask our constituents here present to brief us about their experiences with evaluation, lessons learned in the first round. And in the second one, we will ask them what they will recommend us to improve national evaluation system to make them more inclusive. So with us and this, we go with the world map order, not to create any diplomatic incident. So we have Julius Kenglet from the Philippines, who is the Vice President for Research, Advocacy, and Partnership from the Federation of Free Workers. It's a huge workers organization in Philippines with 40,000 members. We have Dejana Kusmit from Serbia. She's the head of international cooperation within the Serbian Association of Employers. We have Natalia Aquilino from Argentina, who is the Monitoring Innovation Director from the Secretary for Industrial Development of the Ministry of Economy. And we have Fanny Sequeira from Costa Rica, Secretariat General, Confederation of Workers, Renum Novarum. So we will listen to them, and hopefully by the end of this panel, we'll have some good ideas on how to engage ILO constituents better in evaluation to make national evaluation system more inclusive. But before we listen to them, let's get to this crash course with Patricia from our evaluation office. You can use the, yes.
Thank you very much, Guillaume. I have a very important task in 10 minutes to give this crash course, but you let me know if I manage to complete that task. Good morning to all of you, first of all, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to those of you who are connecting with us online. Thank you very much for being with us in this discussion today, notably when we have Patricia Rogers also leading another session. So that was a challenging also task for us. So thank you for being with us. And also allow me please to start off by thanking as well the organizers of the National Evaluation Capacities Conference for inviting the Evaluation Office of the International Labour Organization to organize this panel discussion, and of course to be a panel member as well, together with such distinguished panelists, the constituents of the ILO, right? Because you represent, as Guillaume said, the tripartite primary constituents, government, workers, organization representatives, and employers organization representatives. I think before we start, when we were planning for this session, we thought to ourselves, there is a need to unpack why and how we want to approach the topic of sustainable development through decent work, and why the importance of tripartite partnerships when it comes to resilient national evaluation systems. So as it's been said, and as I emphasized, you represent the constituents of the ILO. The ILO is the unique tripartite UN agency that since 1919, as Guillaume mentioned, brings together government, employers, and workers to set labor standards, to develop policies and devise programs for the promotion of decent work for all. And decent work, as we know it, is an SDG in itself, SDG number 8, but it also cuts across other SDGs and the vast majority of the SDGs in the 2030 agenda, right? Because decent work is, for instance, a driver for an economic growth that is inclusive. It allows for ending poverty, of course, but it's also an engine for economic growth as well. And let me give you an example. Decent work, a very summarized definition of decent work, is a productive employment for all, right? Under conditions of freedom, equity, security, and human dignity. And that entails many different factors. But for instance, by employing workers under decent jobs or with decent jobs, that means, amongst many things, fair incomes. And that is eventually money that is in the pockets of individuals that gets injected in the local economy. And by that, it is also an engine for boosting the sustainability of enterprises within the labor market, right? Labor economy. And that money in the pockets of individuals and, of course, with the enterprises leads to or goes back to government, right, in the form of taxes. And that can be used to extend social measures, what we call social protection schemes that protect all citizens within a country, those that are in the labor market, those that are outside the labor market, and those that are in the informal economy, right? So it is already at the heart of the International Labour Organization that the tripartite partnerships are so fundamental for the promotion of a decent work, which is not only an SDG, but it's a key driver for sustainable development overall. Now, we know since 2015 that the planning of actions towards the achievement or progress towards the achievement of the SDGs was the responsibility of stakeholders at country level, right? And for us in the ILO, that has meant that in the same way that the Decent Work Country Program, so the program of work of the ILO takes place in a tripartite manner because it's a result of a tripartite agreement, that planning at country level of national sustainable development plans, strategies, programs, do also necessitate the tripartite constituents, government, employers, and workers' organization representatives to sit around one table to bring social dialogue into action and discuss what is it to be done to bring progress towards decent work and sustainable development, because eventually you are the agents of change at country level. You will be implementing those actions, and it's important that there is an agreement on that, on how to do that, right? Equally, not only the planning had to take place at country level, as we know, but also the evaluation, and that is very well emphasized in the context of the 2030 agenda, as we all know. And equally, for us in the International Labour Organization, in the Evaluation Office, that means bringing tripartite partnerships, discussions, agreements around evaluation processes. We heard already since the start of this conference that when we refer to evaluation of SDG policies at country level, we are touching or we are working in an environment that is highly political, and that is true. But there is also one pivoting item that we strongly have been advocating for, and is the building of national evaluation systems, because they do provide the foundation for evaluations to take place at country level in a regular manner. It's just not a one-off exercise that can happen around one SDG specific actions or national sustainable development plan around one SDG, but it's about setting the foundation on why and what's the added value to bring evaluation into action at country level when we are discussing about decent work, sustainable development, and many other areas that we can think at country level. The national evaluation systems do bring these principles, values, policies, budget, the raison d'etre of evaluation at country level, right? It also brings the capacity to create infrastructure to supply data, as we've been hearing, not only the statistical data, which is important, but also the evaluative data, but also it builds on the capacity to absorb that information, which we tend to forget. And we have been reminded in this conference the importance of being able to absorb that. We do, as we heard this morning, many evaluations. We need to also be able to manage that, right? And that absorption capacity is usually focused on the government side, but there is also a need to bring the other actors at national level, in the case of the ILO, the social partners, and many more, to be able to have also the understanding as to how to maximize the use of that evaluative evidence in their daily work and in discussions on the sustainable development, progress towards decent work and sustainable development. And last but not least, when we talk about national evaluation systems, we tend to forget one key aspect, and that touches upon social dialogue, and is that national evaluation systems do bring and necessitate at the same time an enabling environment for a discussion to be possible. And that is something that by working on national evaluation systems, they do also construct that possibility of an enabling environment that allows to have all key stakeholders around a table and conduct inclusive and participatory evaluations. If I have still a couple of minutes, and I'm looking at Guillaume, I would like to just provide a few examples as to how the International Labour Organization, the Evaluation Office, has been working with constituents to build and to strengthen evaluation capacities and link to that national evaluation system. So, for instance, we have a diagnostic instrument that helps the organization understand how our, what I refer to decent work country program, so our country program of work in a specific country, is linked to national sustainable development strategies. Of course, it is the result of tripartite agreements, and also how it connects with the cooperation framework of the UN and so on, right? And in the evaluation office, we thought, look, considering that we are already implementing that tool, why not extending that mapping to understand in a given country what's the status of a national evaluation system? What's the involvement of the constituents in that evaluation system at national level to measure that progress of sustainable development? And what are the associated capacities on evaluation around that to make that national evaluation system function? And we implemented that across the globe in different countries. And we've identified many things. For instance, we found positive results of evaluation units providing evidence on progress toward the SDGs. Nonetheless, we found also areas where this was mostly government-led. This was leading to producing voluntary national reviews that did not count with all the perspectives that were needed from the social partners. And also we found instances where there was nothing. So we took action. For instance, we implemented, we brought into the country program of work specific initiatives to enhance, to start with, to enhance the capacities on evaluation, because that's the starting point when there is nothing, right? You need to not only, as was mentioned yesterday, not only it's important to understand and to know how to conduct an evaluation. Sometimes it's just as simple as, why should I be using evaluation? Just give me that initiative and a motivation to be using evidence-based coming from evaluations. And we implemented those training initiatives in specific countries, and maybe some of the panelists will refer to those. But the most important thing that we wanted to have in those initiatives was to bring the tripartite constituents around the room, because the evaluation capacity initiative was important to bring, to live that knowledge, but also to have a space for dialogue as to, okay, I understand evaluation, I see the added value, but how are we going to put that into practice? And let's have a discussion around that. And last but not least, another specific example around those training initiatives was in one specific training that we conducted, we worked with a trade union organization who had a program of work that was linked to the SDG, the National Sustainable Development Strategy. And they wanted to build an evaluation framework, and we worked with them in building that, because that was important for them to understand the progress that they were making, but also to bring evidence that they were able to provide to the government later on and the other social partners to demonstrate what were the missing areas, what were the other elements and the other actions that had to be taken, or course correction areas as well. So that's in a nutshell what I wanted to present today. But of course, I will be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. And I think, Guillaume, I hand it over to you for the now interesting discussion that we'll have from our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. I don't know if you recall in the introduction of the conference, the main speaker said, we are here to listen to you. And most of panels are led by evaluation directors so far. So now we will start to listen to you. We have here what I can call users of national evaluation system, or actors or institutions part of the national evaluation system. So finally, we're listening to you. So to start, we will ask each panelist to introduce themselves. First, for who you work, we're curious to know. And we have talked about SDG 8, decent work. If you can, in 3 words, we have to manage time, 3 words, what means decent work for you? And maybe we will see the definitions are different. And finally, if you can, in this brief introduction, explain us what you think is an inclusive national evaluation system. So we start from Asia and we follow the sun and conclude with Costa Rica. So Julius.
So again, good morning. I'm Julius Kainglet. I represent workers from the Philippines through my organization, the Federation of Free Workers, which is also an affiliate of the International Trade Union Confederation and affiliated to many global union federations. Um, so maybe to answer the three words, what is decent work for me? That's too short, no? But I can start with rights, continue with protection, and then sustainability. Okay, so going to the question about what makes a national evaluation plan inclusive. Well, for one, I think it's very important that there is direct participation of workers through trade unions. And I put emphasis on trade unions because unlike other organizations, especially as compared to a lot of NGOs, trade unions have a mass membership. uh, we have workers as members, and as workers they also enjoy their families also enjoy the programs and services that we give. So if you include trade unions in the evaluation system you have, you already make the thousands of their members a part of your evaluation system, and that in itself is already inclusive. A second, I think it's really very important that there is free exchange of information, there's transparency, because you have to have informed choices, and that would mean that, well, government should not be hiding information. And when workers eventually come up and find out about important data information, then they should make sure that this becomes included, no, in both the planning, implementation, evaluation, no, of programs that we want to implement, no, for development. For example, a concrete example would be um, like in our government, but they're kind of silent when it comes to killings of workers and the different violations of freedom of association principles. So as trade unions, we want to make sure that these are highlighted because these are very basic information that needs to be included in our planning. We have to be rights based. We have to be human centered. So it's very important. There's free exchange of information, and that there's no information hidden. Third, I would also like to say that it's very important uh, that we practice social dialogue, no, as explained by our ILO colleagues. It means there has to be joint activities every time, joint planning, joint implementation, joint brainstorming, joint problem solving, and of course, joint decision making and joint evaluation. So if we factor in all of these factors, then that makes for a very inclusive evaluation system. Thank you.
Thank you, Julius. Yes, engaging workers. So we have been talking about engaging citizens in evaluation to increase accountability. Workers is an important group in that sense. So now let's go to, we're moving with the plane, flying over some countries. We are landing in Serbia with Diana, and she represents an employer organization. So Diana, can you explain us which employer organization you represent? And again, in 3 words, what is decent work for you? And what is an inclusive evaluation system?
Good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here and thankful for being able to speak here on behalf of the business, particularly Serbian Association of Employers, which is coming from Serbia. It is a small Balkan country compared to some countries, and yet big enough to be considered the middle size. Business in Serbia is just like anywhere else. We are part of the system. So this conference is mainly involving government representatives, but I have here dear colleagues that we together work on so many important issues which are related to the social sustainable development goals. Guillaume spoke of number 8, but actually we are quite keen as business to have good education available to everybody. So it's not just goal number 8. We are keen to eradicate poverty. So it's not just 8, it's also number 1 goal, etc. So these 3 words, in order to be able to be responsive to the needs of business, but also other people who are involved in social economic stage and policies, we are keen to have sustainable environment being enabling environment. There are no jobs, there is no poverty eradication unless there are companies which can provide jobs. So you need sustainable companies that can provide, offer sustainable jobs. So another very important adjective that describes our wishes and our intentions and our thoughts on decent work is productivity. Everybody of us goes to work, comes back home, and needs this feeling of being productive, doing something during the day, and then being efficiently and adequately rewarded for that work. Business wants the same. Nobody establishes a company just because he loves hiring other people. There is nothing wrong with it. It's totally legitimate, just like workers have their rights for decent work. Companies also have rights to require decent, enabling environment for operating. Then it's about being fair. What does it mean, fair? You need a fair law, which will treat fairly, equally, all that it is applied to. Then only companies who are operating in fair environment have positions that enable them to have fair and square rules that will apply to their employees and bring fair environment for the benefit of the whole society. Now, just like Julius said, we are in the process of creating some laws, drafting laws, some policies, some measures that support certain groups of citizens or employers or workers or disabled persons or women, it doesn't matter. We do participate in creating that. Then we brainstorm. Is it good? Is it not good? What can be part of consensus, which must be done? Okay, accept it. You don't like it, but you have to live with it. That's part of the dialogue. That is why 3 sides have to find the common ground and agree on that, whether they like it or not. It is accepted, and that's the way it is. Then it goes to parliament, it becomes effective, etc. But nothing is perfect right from the moment it is born. Look at a child. It grows, it doesn't know how to walk, it doesn't know how to eat. You have to teach, and you have to correct, and you have to educate. So we have to be part, both business and workers, representatives, part of, just like we are part of creating something, part of evaluating something. We have proposals of our own. This is not working. How can we correct it? We have to be able to propose some changes. And that's the positive side of consensus, of dialogue, which is at the very heart of the ILO, that we are constituents of all the 3 sides. So
Good. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Diana. As you see, different perspectives, but common objective. Good. So now we will fly over the Atlantic, also change language. So I invite you to put your headset. Vamos a seguir siendo en español, justo con Natalia Aquino. de Argentina. Aquilino.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me here. Thanks so much to the ILO for leading this panel, and thank you for being with us today. I will be switching to Spanish right now. Oh my gosh, make me red. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I need to honor my own language, my own country and language. Yes. Me gustaría comenzar diciendo, yo trabajo en el Ministerio de Economía de la República Argentina, en la Secretaría de Industria, donde tenemos, por suerte, una Dirección Nacional de Evaluación que está muy comprometida con el trabajo de planificación, seguimiento y evaluación de la gestión. Con lo cual es un ambiente facilitador, como recién decía Diana, muy pertinente para esta conversación. Antes de calificar el trabajo docente, me gustaría compartir con ustedes, probablemente muchos de ustedes lo saben, que Argentina fue uno de los países que impulsó la creación del Objetivo de Desarrollo del Milenio número 8, ya hace muchos años, para los que somos más viejos, y sigue teniendo hoy un rol y un peso enorme el trabajo en trabajo decente que hace nuestro país, y está muy comprometido con esta agenda, con lo cual me parece que eso no es menor. Y en este sentido, 3 aportes muy parecidos a los que a los que comentaron los colegas, que viene, por supuesto, del Plan Nacional de Acción de Trabajo Decente de Argentina, que tienen que ver con pensar al trabajo decente desde el diálogo social, con claridad. Ese es un calificativo que no puede estar ausente. También pensarlo en términos de justicia y equidad, que son 2 valores que se comparten, creo, socialmente, tripartitamente, y que están presentes en nuestro plan de trabajo decente, con un foco muy particular, muy vinculado a la era de desigualdades y de inequidades que estamos viviendo, que tiene que ver con focalizar en las cuestiones de género, focalizar en la sostenibilidad, esta inclusión del ambiente como una contraparte central en todos los procesos de planificación, que fue algo que se discutió muy bien esta mañana en la primera sesión, esto de, ¿no?, pensar la evaluación no tanto desde lo antropocéntrico, sino desde lo ambiental y sostenible. Y finalmente, justicia también en términos de salario, que creo que es una deuda que todavía tenemos como humanidad. Y finalmente, un aporte propio, que me parece que el trabajo decente tiene que ser humano, pero también tiene que ser humanizante, ¿no? Creo que venimos de muchas décadas de trabajo que nos ha apartado de esa calidad humana que debe tener. Me gustó mucho la segunda reflexión que nos proponen los colegas de OIT, que tiene que ver con esta idea de pensar cuándo es inclusivo un sistema de evaluación. Y una manera de definirlo sencilla y práctica, me parece que tiene que ver con pensarlo como el resultado de políticas y de un ciclo de políticas públicas inclusivas. Es decir, no vamos a tener ambientes de evaluación inclusivos cuando nuestra planificación no lo es, cuando nuestra implementación no lo es, cuando nuestra presupuestación no lo es. Entonces, me parece que la manera es pensarlo sistémicamente como el resultado de procesos que preceden esta idea de la inclusividad y que tiene que estar embebida desde el origen de las políticas públicas. Y dejarles en este sentido 3 ejemplos de lo que estamos haciendo en Argentina que puede tener el germen, ¿no?, de esa inclusividad y que puede llevarnos a, cuando tengamos nuestro sistema de evaluación más completo, calificarlo de esta manera. La primera es la construcción liderada por el presidente Fernández de un espacio como el Consejo Económico y Social, que de alguna manera tiene esta mirada tripartita y lidera desde ese espacio políticas estratégicas. El segundo tiene que ver con toda la plataforma que se armó desde el Estado argentino vinculada a la identificación de metas en vinculación con los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible, la elaboración de los informes de seguimiento, los National Voluntary Reports, que son muy pertinentes y que Argentina es uno de los pocos países que lo viene presentando sistemáticamente año tras año, y que también lideraron de alguna manera y proveyeron una plataforma para que las provincias, nuestro país tiene 24 provincias, con lo cual es muchos estados en un estado, para que las provincias también tengan su propia agenda de desarrollo sostenible vinculada a los ODS, y que también los trabajadores hayan liderado una plataforma clave que se llama Pampa 2030, que es una plataforma desde la cual los colegas trabajadores monitorean el avance de los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible. Y la última, que quiero comentarles en términos de ejemplo, es una planificación estratégica inclusiva que se hizo en el Ministerio, en la Secretaría de Industria, que tiene que ver con cómo pensar un plan productivo para Argentina 2030 con las provincias, con los empleadores y con todos los actores para que podamos tener un horizonte compartido. Así que ese es mi aporte por ahora. Gracias.
Ok, muchas gracias, Natalia. Vamos a seguir siendo en español con Fanny Sequeira de Costa Rica, que también representa una organización de trabajadores. Fanny.
Buenos días. Trabajo con la Confederación Sindical de Trabajadores de las Américas, CSA, y con la Confederación Sindical Internacional, CSI, al nivel internacional. Y a nivel nacional, con la Confederación de Trabajadores Rerum Novarum y el Sindicato de Trabajadoras y Trabajadores de la Educación Costarricense. Trabajo decente en muy pocas palabras. Derechos, protección y diálogo social. En cuanto a un sistema de evaluación inclusivo, es un sistema de evaluación que posibilita, promueve y asegura la participación inclusiva de los actores sociales y de las instituciones públicas en todas las fases y subsistemas de su desarrollo. En Costa Rica existe un sistema nacional de evaluación para evaluar los procesos de desarrollo nacional en diversos ámbitos y está a cargo del Ministerio de Planificación y Política Económica, Mideplan. En ese marco, hay otros instrumentos institucionalizados para coadyuvar a la evaluación, como lo es la Política Nacional de Evaluación 2018-2030, el Plan de Acción Nacional, la Agenda Nacional de Evaluación y la Plataforma Nacional de Evaluación. Esta última está constituida por instancias legislativas y gubernamentales, la academia y por actores de la sociedad civil, entre ellos, en teoría, los sindicatos. La plataforma tiene funciones declaradas de inclusión consultiva con actores sociales. Además, el Sistema Nacional pide a cada institución pública y ministerios tener un plan de evaluación. El propio Ministerio de Trabajo y Seguridad Social tiene un plan de evaluación de sus diversos programas y proyectos, pero los sindicatos tenemos una participación muy marginal o nula en todas esas instancias para efectos de planificación y evaluación. El sistema nacional costarricense no es inclusivo de la participación sindical, pues la perspectiva de los trabajadores y trabajadoras se ha tomado muy poco o nada en cuenta para la evaluación de las políticas públicas, por lo cual las valoraciones sindicales no están integradas en alguna medida en los procesos evaluativos del sistema y de sus subsistemas. Asimismo, en lo relativo al mundo del trabajo, consideramos que la OIT no ha sido suficientemente aprovechada por el Sistema Nacional de Evaluación para monitorear los avances en materia de trabajo decente, de acuerdo con los indicadores elaborados por esta organización.
Gracias, Fanny. Should I speak English? Yes, I will go back to English. Easier for me. Good, and maybe easier for the majority of participants. Yes, this panel is about decent work. You just heard through some kind of social dialogue, different representative defining what is decent work. Before we move into their own experience about national evaluation system, we'll ask Patricia to summarize what have been said, and then we go back with the second round with the panelists. Patricia, you can.
Thank you very much. I think listening to all of you that there is a common ground, certainly. That of course you provided different views, but when it comes to the definitions on decent work, there has been no disagreement that I have noticed, right? There has been no disagreement, right? You mentioned different angles of it, but I think overall you were pointing at the fact that decent work is a goal and a driver, right? And it's a goal for a rights-based a system, one that can protect, that can bring fair income, that can bring equality and so on, one that can also sustain enterprises, but it's also a driver for that, right? Because as you rightly pointed out, Jana, you need to have the capacity, the sustainability in the environment for those enterprises to bring decent jobs, right? So I think you all provided both a bottom-up and top-down approach in your definitions, one that by doing decent work, by working under decent work conditions, we bring at the individual levels rights-based, human-centered approaches with protection, with equality, with fairness. We also help at the institutional level, the enterprises, and then that all translates into capacity for governments to extend policies that can protect. And at the same time, that cycle will close, right? We'll go back to the institution, individuals, and so on. So on decent work, you will correct me if I'm wrong, for sure, but I think there was, despite the different views, I saw convergence in that. In terms of the national evaluation systems, one that were inclusive, I think as we moved along the table, you kind of closed the cycle, right? Because you pointed at the fact that, yes, indeed, we need to focus on the evaluation, but that needs to start from the planning. And I fully agree with that. And because it's already a culture that is embedded already in the whole results-based planning, and therefore monitoring and evaluation. And then you also emphasize the fact that, of course, bringing that inclusiveness means you being there in those discussions, right? Government, as I refer in the introduction, the agents of change, right, need to be there when it comes to the discussions around decent work and sustainable development. So I think, Guillaume, maybe you want to add anything, but I would conclude based on the different perspective this point. Thank you.
Good. No disagreement, so it's easy. Okay, so this conference is about evaluation. So we have used an evaluation process for this panel. If you see this panel as we may see this panel as like a focus group. And the question of this panel would be how we can bolster the participation of tripartite constituents in national evaluation system. That's the evaluation question guiding us. And to collect data, we just invited people who has a lot of experience in being engaged in evaluation in their country. So they will present us the data they have accumulated through the experience, and also their findings, conclusion about how it is now. Are they included in these national evaluation systems? So first we listen to their findings and conclusions, and then in the second round, we'll ask them about their recommendations. So we follow the evaluation thinking or process. So let's start with Julius, about your role with national evaluation system, your experience, lessons learned. We want to hear everything, the good, the bad, but things that are recorded.
Okay, thank you, Liam. Shall I go ahead?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I think the principal role that we play is we are the devil's advocate, if not the devil himself, no? And living up to that role, I think one of the main things that one of the experiences that we've had that has bore much fruit is that as the devil's advocate, we come up with shadow reports, no? Or in recent language, it's now called highlight report. No, just to emphasize that we are not agents of darkness, but we actually bring light to these plans and evaluation. So what does it mean for us to have come up with the shadow report? Well, for one, I refer to our particular experience in 2019 when the Philippines was a voluntary national review country. So what they did was they came up with a draft which did not necessarily go through consultation. So what we did was we talked to our friends from the planning ministry, got ourselves a copy of the draft BNR report, and point by point made our critique, made our reactions, comments, and recommendations from the report that they drafted. No? And it was a good exercise because, you know, in the Philippines, not all trade unions are under one umbrella. We have several trade union centers and up to 100 labor federations. But for this particular instance, we sat together and came up with a joint trade union position on the VNR report. And that's exactly what we did. No, we published this report and used this when we engage and debate with government, when they present a rosy picture of the SDGs, how it's being implemented. Well, we did not necessarily present not a thorny picture, but we just presented reality. So that's very good. And in the process of doing the VNR report, we were also able to integrate the different SDGs. Of course, as trade unionists, you would assume that we will prioritize SDG 8, but as we found out, and as what the ITUC has done helping us, we were able to establish the different links of SDGs, for example, to education, where there is a big role of teachers have to play, to gender equality, and of course equality, since we are campaigning for living wages, and of course SDG 16 on justice, making sure that the rule of law recognizes the rights of workers, and SDG 17, since we advocate for social dialogue as a means of implementation. So after the 2019 experience, we went through the same process and we kind of update this report every year. And just recently, 1 and 2 years ago, what we did with the BNR report was that we used the same framework to critique the socio-economic peace building framework of the UN, or the development assistance framework. So it has now served several purposes, no, the reports that we do. We submit it to the national government, and we also submit it to the UN system. No? So not only to the ILO, but also to the whole UN system, considering that there's a one UN approach right now. And while we are mainstream in social dialogue with the labor ministry and with the ILO in terms of the UN, what we try to do is to mainstream trade union positions to the whole of government and mainstream trade union positions to the whole of the United Nations system. Thank you.
Thank you, Julius. I think the audience will understand if you publish a formal report and there is a shadow report, the attention will go where? On the shadow report, on the formal report. So interesting. So make sure you include workers next time. Good. Diana, what are your findings, conclusion about your role in Serbia as employers?
Yes, well, we, as a country, we have a decent work country program, which goes for 4 years. Now it expired and we should negotiate about the new one. All three constituents, being the government, the trade unions, and the business representatives, should agree on what are the hottest issues to be addressed during the next 4 years with the support of the International Labor Organization. Now, for this program, which lasts 4 years, for each partner, there are separate activities which are of common interests, okay, Ministry of Labor will adopt a new law, but it'll affect workers, it'll affect businesses. So we together work on that. So it goes for all of us. If trade unions or employers organizations are to provide, BINAS, to provide new services for their members, these services need to be developed. So it is particularly only our activity. But let's say it is of common interest for the country, that is agreed. Now we have the supervisory body, which is also tripartite. So we follow how the implementation goes on. For instance, Ministry of Labor should have introduced at least the drafting group being composed some 3 years ago, but it is still not happening for various reasons. Let's put it aside. But we are informed on inability of the Ministry of Labor to start the procedure, at least on this very formal, friendly, common ground level. So we understand each other quite well. Now we are also members as Employers Association of various working groups outside of the Decent Work Country program. These are tripartite as well. For instance, Ministry of Education wants to do something within the education system. Let's say propose a certain amendments to the law. Again, a tripartite drafting group is being assembled and we are able to provide our comments, to insist on something, etc. So this is when we are called to become members of such groups. But we also have the ability to propose something of our own, some amendments and changes. So this concept of interaction, of exchanging information, of adding to the evaluation of the quality of the draft program or the existing measure, program, law, whatever there is, but it is not always functioning. Ideally, we have all the legal framework, we have all the necessary ILO conventions ratified, they are there on the paper, laws were adopted by the parliament, but we have situations like, let's say, budget. Ministry of Finances never ever submits the budget proposal to the national tripartite body. Never. Or we had a situation last year for the first time when it was submitted for 24 hours. So it gets to the secretariat of this council. It is supposed to be sent to tripartite constituents. They have time to take it, to take a look, to comment, to provide the comments, to gather the comments, to get it back to the Ministry of Finance. No way. No way. So there is still a lot of ground to work on in this common vision of tripartite system, agreements, consensus, and affecting the final evaluation, whether something that is planned is good or not. There is area or space to improve it or how to improve it, maybe.
Thank you, Diana. So business organizations are included, consulted, but still there is room to improve. Excellent. Now let's go back to Argentina with Natalia, government perspective. And Natalia has a lot of experience. She's a monitoring and evaluation director in her organization.
Gracias. Me parece muy interesante compartir algunos findings, como le decimos en evaluación, y esta lógica, tenerla en el panel. Yo quiero solamente compartir 3 cosas que me parecen que son interesantes para conversar con ustedes hoy. La primera es que para que la evaluación avance, se consolide, se institucionalice y llegue a un punto de condensación suficiente para ser parte del ecosistema político, necesita mucho de todos los actores. Todos los actores son importantes. Las alianzas tienen que ser integrales y este es un desafío que todavía nos toca y que es enorme. Yo trabajé para el Programa de Naciones Unidas para el Desarrollo en mi país y en Nueva York. Trabajé también para un think tank que promovía la idea de la evaluación de políticas públicas. Tuve la suerte de fundar y presidir la Asociación Argentina de Evaluadores y todos estos espacios tienen un rol y tienen algo que decir. Entonces, mi sugerencia sería que si están en alguna posición relativa dentro del sistema de evaluación en sus países, traten de conectar todas esas líneas, traten de incluir a todos los actores. Me parece que la única manera de avanzar es la construcción de alianzas en este sentido. Sin embargo, hay una alianza que tenemos que tener y que es la más importante, y que lo charlaba con Nabor hace un ratito en el coffee break. Y el actor central sigue siendo el financiamiento. Y ese actor muchas veces no está sentado a la mesa. Nuestros países, nuestras sociedades muchas veces tienen una mirada muy voluntarista de estos temas. Y sin embargo, nadie se cuestiona que exista, por ejemplo, un ministerio de planificación, una secretaría de Hacienda, una secretaría de presupuesto. Pero todavía no hemos llegado a tener oficinas de evaluación en todas nuestras reparticiones. Y creo que eso habla mucho del nivel de desarrollo que tienen nuestros países. Entonces, mi propuesta, basada en este hallazgo, tiene que ver con tratar de visibilizar lo suficiente la evaluación en nuestras organizaciones para llevarlo a ese nivel. Y el tercer aprendizaje es que mucho de esto se consigue, por lo menos de mi humilde experiencia de trabajo, mostrando primero resultados. Me parece que hay una cuestión de traccionar actores y traccionar recursos a partir de los resultados que podamos mostrar. Y eso es mucho más poderoso que cualquier marco legal que podamos pensar para la evaluación, que cualquier ecosistema que podamos crear para la evaluación. Con lo cual, es un llamado casi a la acción, ¿no? Es decir, tratemos de primero empujar, mostrar algún tipo de resultado, y creo que esa es la manera. En el Ministerio tenemos en este momento 3 acciones que son bastante significativas de esto. Primero, estamos haciendo una evaluación de impacto muy comprensiva sobre uno de los programas estratégicos de la Secretaría de Industria, que es un programa de desarrollo de proveedores, que apunta básicamente a tratar de mejorar las exportaciones para Argentina. Y creo que eso generó en el Ministerio una idea de que la evidencia puede ayudar a los programas a tomar mejores decisiones. Otra de las cuestiones que estamos llevando adelante es también una evaluación más cualitativa de un proceso de diálogo social sobre la minería, que son temas súper innovadores y que sobre todo nuestras sociedades todavía están debatiendo acerca de su utilidad social, de su sostenibilidad, y estamos tratando de acompañar ese proceso. Y el tercero, que es clave, vinculando financiamiento con evaluación, y con esto termino, es una iniciativa muy estratégica para nuestro país, que es la evaluación del financiamiento internacional, que es la manera de cómo nuestros países contratan deuda y se financian a sí mismos. Y es importante también que no solo la cooperación internacional tenga una mirada propia sobre cómo fue el desempeño de ese financiamiento, sino que los países puedan construir una mirada desde la apropiación nacional de cómo fue ese desempeño y en qué medida contribuyó a los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible, a las prioridades nacionales y a todos lo que son los temas más estratégicos. Así que por ahora espero tener muchos años más en evaluación para seguir aprendiendo.
Gracias, Natalia. So you mentioned if we do good use of evaluation, there are good results from evaluation, and then the decision maker use evaluation. That's the best way to advocate for evaluation. Excellent. That's very interesting. Okay, let's move. Vamos a viajar en Costa Rica ahora, en español todavía, con Fanny.
Bueno, en relación con nuestro rol en la evaluación y nuestras experiencias, si bien las centrales sindicales tenemos una escasa participación en el Sistema Nacional de Evaluación, hay algunos espacios de participación en instancias tripartitas en que damos aportes sindicales para la evaluación de políticas institucionales, pero lamentablemente al final con poca incidencia real, porque se ha tenido poca receptividad gubernamental para ello. Existe el Comité Consultivo del Consejo de Alto Nivel para la implementación de los ODS en nuestro país, el cual es parte de la gobernanza precisamente para esa implementación. Participamos en el comité a partir de diciembre de 2017 gracias a la mediación de la OIT y de ACTRAF, ya que inicialmente no fuimos, cuando se firmó el pacto, el sindicalismo no fue invitado a firmar. Firmaron todos sectores de la sociedad menos el sindicalismo, pero con esa mediación logramos también incorporarnos a ese sistema de gobernanza. En este marco, hemos participado en reuniones con una pluralidad de actores, pero no siempre bien estructuradas ni con una secuencia sistemática de diálogo constructivo y efectivo. Ni se ha promovido el análisis y la valoración conjunta de políticas públicas, ni verdaderos debates sobre la situación real de los ODS en cada caso. Al final, no pudimos lograr que el gobierno reflejara en el último Informe Nacional Voluntario 2020, una evaluación apropiada del ODS 8, dejando vacíos e inconsistencias y un trato descuidado en los indicadores de trabajo decente en el país. A esto se suma que desde el 2018 hasta la fecha, la experiencia sindical de diálogo social y tripartismo ha sido muy insatisfactoria, porque durante todo el periodo gubernamental anterior y lo que lleva el nuevo gobierno, el diálogo social ha sido una deficiencia notable a nivel nacional y sectorial, ocasionando reformas y leyes en nuestro país que nos han alejado del logro de la Agenda 2030 y han restringido y retrocedido los derechos sindicales y laborales. Los graves conflictos sociales ocurridos en el 2018 y 2019 son reflejo o reflejan las severas carencias en materia de diálogo social en nuestro país. Y tripartido.
Okay, muchas gracias, Fanny. So if we look at this from the positive side, there is a lot of room for improvement in Costa Rica. Okay, so that's the finding, lessons learned from our panelists. Already they started to talk about the recommendation, but we will move forward with these recommendations. So for recommendation, I have two questions. The first one is, as a representative of the government or the worker organization or the business organization, what would you recommend? Something concrete to strengthen national evaluation system? That's the formal question. And the other question is the dreamer's question, if I can call it this way, is if you were the main decision maker in your national evaluation system. I don't know who is the main decision maker in your national evaluation system, but I heard from some of you yesterday would be the President of the Republic. So what decision would you take tomorrow morning to strengthen the system through tripartism? And we start with Julius.
Okay, well, if I were the president as the main decision maker, first of all, I will return all of the money I stole out of corruption, and make sure I put a stop to the killings of workers and other violations of freedom of association. Well, one of the things I would consider doing first, of course, is to make sure that the shadow reports that trade unions do will come out of the shadow and be part of the light. So that means we have to mainstream workers' perspectives into planning, implementation, and evaluation systems. Second, we don't want to necessarily reinvent the whole wheel. The Philippines is signatory to the ILO Convention 144 on tripartism. So we do have a lot of existing tripartite bodies. And the main tripartite body we have right now is the National Tripartite Industrial Peace Council, which acts uh, as the main body which goes through all of the proposed legislations, policies related to labor and employment. So what I would suggest would be for this body to add to its job, add to its task, the national evaluation system. And while we do already have representatives from governments, employers, and workers in this body, we could add other sectors, no, to make it tripartite plus plus, just to make it even more inclusive. Um, Related to that, there should be a lot of capacity building, no, because well, you wouldn't expect trade unions to be experts in economics and evaluation, no? But what we do have is a lot of experience in collective bargaining. We've had a lot of experiences in raising wages and benefits and improving working conditions of our members in bilateral discussions with employers. So we want to take advantage of the skill we have and through help of our social partners, increase our capacity, our capability uh, in performing or in doing evaluation. Third, as part of mainstreaming evaluation systems into the tripartite mechanisms that we already have, we would also be happy if decent work indicators would be indicated in our national planning. Of course, if it's part of the plan, then it becomes part of the evaluation. And uh, there's still a lot of room for improvement in this regard, because while there are some data that we could generate that would approximate what the conditions of workers are, they are not necessarily integrated into the evaluation system. So those are the major things that we would like to do. And given some more time, of course, it would be very helpful to our trade unionists if we get to listen to the experience of other trade unions in other countries and get to learn from their experiences. So that should be part of the capacity building that we undergo. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Julius, for your frankness about what you will do if you will become president. Not sure if it was related to evaluation system, but good. So Diana, the same question. What do you recommend to strengthen national evaluation system? And if you could implement a game changer tomorrow as the president of Serbia, what would you do?
Empower women to be decision makers throughout the country. No, really. Okay, so how to strengthen the national evaluation system? Being the one who says that, just like my colleagues from trade unions, that we should be part of the system, we also need to be educated, and our capacities need to be strengthened too. Look, this is a conference where majority of the participants are, let's say, on the government side, if there are three sides in this story. And the whole time we are listening here, at least so far, their capacities need to be strengthened. They need to be explained, blah, blah, etc., etc. But we do as well. We are all on the same boat. If the government is evaluating some program, some initiative, some act, whatever, it implies me as an individual. It is my destiny. It is my life. It is my quality of life at the stake. I want to know what is evaluated, what are the indicators, at which cycle, how often it is, and then the final result. Okay, why don't you share it with us? What were your findings? We're not saying that you are not doing the good job, but we want to know, what did you find? If you are saying the water is polluted and your measures to make it clean did not work out, I have to ask myself, what am I drinking? Am I free to unlock the tap and just pour in freely. In my country, there is no way that I can go green. Me as a person living private life, me as a professional, not at home, not at work. There are no ways. There are no ways I can, what's the word, separate the waste. I have no, yeah, I have no, I mean, I can take a bag and put it in a green somewhere downtown because it's paper only, but they will take it, that paper, and put it on the same pile where they put also food residues, etc. I have no choice to choose between green energy, bioenergy, solar energy, whatever, or energy produced by coal. So if your, as governments, intentions are to make it cleaner and greener, I want to be part of it. But tell me, allow me, enable me to be part of that. As business, I would also like to know what your plans are. You cannot just punish me because there is a quota system employing disability persons with disabilities. You have to, if you don't pay. But there is no person with disability with the profile that I need. You're punishing me for that because I have no option to choose. So you have to change mindset in achieving, how to achieve, how to measure, and who to share with, who to involve with, who to involve into measuring. So we need to know, businesses and citizens as well, how we are progressing. If I were a president, I would
Enable this through evaluation, of course. Okay, thank you, Diana. Recalling, she spoke as a citizen and she also spoke as a representative of a business organization. Two users of National Evaluation System. Natalia.
Gracias. Breve, porque así podemos conversar un poco también. Dos recomendaciones. La primera recomendación, también muy basada en la experiencia y en lo que uno aprendió, es que tenemos que pensar estrategias de desarrollo de capacidades más amplias. A mí me preocupó, y voy a ser un poco provocativa con esto, ayer, que toda la discusión sobre capacidades giró en torno al training, al entrenamiento, a la capacitación. Voy a citar acá a Pink Floyd, ya que hay muchos jóvenes, y creo que llegamos a un punto que we don't need no education. O sea, necesitamos hacer evaluaciones, necesitamos mostrar que la evidencia puede cambiar las cosas, tenemos que salir de esa fase, creo que por lo menos en los países que estamos con desafíos de desarrollo todavía, tenemos que empezar a moverlo desde otro lado. Entonces mi primera recomendación es pensar estrategias creativas de desarrollo de capacidades que involucren al poder legislativo, al poder judicial, al poder ejecutivo, a la sociedad civil, a los trabajadores, que sean mucho más amplias en la construcción, ¿no?, de esta idea de la evaluabilidad, que para mí es muy importante. La segunda recomendación, creo que se cae de madura, es invirtamos, financiemos nuestros sistemas de evaluación, porque si no, todo esto es más que una esperanza y un buen deseo. Y finalmente, si tuviera un rol de decisión ejecutiva en cualquier ámbito, creo que la primera medida sería crear una unidad de evaluación del desempeño y del impacto de nuestro accionar. Creo que la rendición de cuentas es clave, pero que necesitamos un espacio para el cual la evaluación sea su función de producción esencial, que no haga 300 otras cosas, sino que se enfoque en algo que, si bien es novedoso, creo que ha llegado para cambiar mucha de la discusión política en nuestros países. Y me gustaría cerrar con una frase que creo que aprendimos todos, o por lo menos fue un aprendizaje muy personal después de la pandemia, y que podría decir algo como que la evidencia ya no es más un lujo, es una necesidad del desarrollo humano. Gracias.
Thank you. Thank you, Natalia. She mentioned Pink Floyd, the wall, but she could have also mentioned money from Dark Side of the Moon. Yes, because yes, two times she referred the importance of funds for evaluation. Evaluation is not free, but what's the cost of not doing evaluation? And she also mentioned this in her closing words. Okay, Fanny?
Para fortalecer los sistemas nacionales de evaluación, las instituciones públicas deben ofrecer amplias y cada vez más eficaces oportunidades de participación a la ciudadanía en la discusión, formulación, ejecución y evaluación de las políticas públicas, no solamente en su evaluación, desde la primera fase. Las partes y actores interesados en la incidencia democrática tienen el derecho a ser consultados, a participar en diversos niveles en los procesos de evaluación y a acceder a la información sobre la implementación de las recomendaciones arrojadas tras los resultados de las evaluaciones. Este proceso de evaluación debe presentarse a lo largo de todo el ciclo de políticas públicas y no solamente al final, como ocurre, por ejemplo, en mi país. Es imprescindible facultar la participación e inclusión auténtica del sindicalismo en el Sistema Nacional de Evaluación y sus subsistemas, es decir, en la Política Nacional de Evaluación, en la Agenda y en la Plataforma Nacional. Los empleadores suelen integrar casi todas esas instancias, lo cual es apropiado, pero no ocurre así con las centrales sindicales, cuya inclusión es un requerimiento democrático y legítimo en el marco del tripartismo. En las instancias tripartitas es esencial fortalecer la cultura de la evaluación inclusiva, ya que si bien se pueden tener algunos acuerdos de corto plazo, no se logra consensuar indicadores de logro sobre la calidad de los resultados a obtener en materia de políticas de trabajo decente. Y por tanto, se carece de un monitoreo tripartito de indicadores claves. Es imprescindible generar evidencias para tomar mejores decisiones de políticas y contribuir a la transparencia y rendición de cuentas. Un ejemplo que ilustra la carencia en este plano es el caso de los programas de trabajo decente, que se firmaron tripartitamente con apoyo de la OIT en los últimos 12 años, los cuales nunca terminaron de arrancar y producir resultados reconocibles, y nunca se estableció someterlos a instancias de evaluación del sistema nacional. ¿Qué haría mañana a primera hora? Pondría en marcha un acuerdo tripartito de política de evaluación inclusiva que propicie el fortalecimiento de las capacidades de evaluación de los actores del tripartismo para mejorar la toma de decisiones basada en evidencias, el aprendizaje organizacional y el progreso continuo de la acción institucional pública y privada. Plantearía además un paquete de programas para el uso de herramientas de gestión del conocimiento con los actores sociales, para asegurar la proyección societal y la calidad de las evaluaciones, porque es necesario que el análisis de las intervenciones públicas por medio de las evaluaciones sea susceptible de consensos y aportes de todos los actores y del Estado como garante de derechos. También propiciaría mejorar los espacios de articulación y participación de los actores del tripartismo y a su vez la articulación entre diferentes espacios de diálogo social, cuyas interrelaciones son estratégicas para los fines de la evaluación integral del sistema nacional, enfocándose en la valoración de avances de la Agenda 2030 y en particular del ODS 8, así como de resultados e impactos. En dichos espacios, propondría trabajar tripartitamente la elaboración y o la selección de indicadores adecuados para la medición de procesos en los objetivos de desarrollo nacional.
Gracias, Presidente. Okay, thank you so much. Fanny mentioned many points, but first she mentioned the importance to go with the tripartite approach, especially if policy programs are about the world of work. These are the representative of the world of work. Developing capacities, access to information, transparency, evaluation is part of that. And not only at the end, throughout the cycle, from the identification, design, implementation, and evaluation. So not just the evaluation phase, but all phases. Good. So can we applaud our panelists? Yes. Is there any questions? Questions or comments, intervention, reaction before we go for a lunch? Yes, the microphone is coming from the back.
Muchas gracias en español. José Nabor Cruz Marcelo, de Coneval, México. Para el panel, un poco contextualizando, en México hemos tenido una política de incremento de salario mínimo los últimos 4 años, muy parecido a lo que ocurrió en Brasil en el primer periodo del gobierno del presidente Lula. En ese sentido, yo les preguntaría para sus países, ¿hay condiciones de establecer una política de incremento de salario mínimo en el corto y mediano plazo? Si es así en lo positivo, ¿cuáles serían las condiciones que favorecerían esa política? O si no, ¿cuáles serían los obstáculos institucionales que podrían freno a una política de incremento de salario mínimo en sus ciudades? Gracias.
We have little time, but if you can, sharp response, Diana.
Yeah.
Okay.
In Serbia, we have a council, National Tripartite Council, where partners discuss about the minimum price per hour once a year, usually August, September, October for the next year. Now the trade unions are pushing for this to be discussed each 6 months, but I don't know where we are at the moment.
Julius?
Yeah, our present system also, there's a wage setting mechanism, but setting of wages is discriminatory in the sense that the amount you get is based on where you live. So if you're from the city, you get more. If you're from the provinces, you get less. So now we have pending legislation that would revert our system to a national minimum wage. So we start from a national minimum wage that is the same and non-discriminatory for everyone, and then there would be increments based on your skill or from the industry you belong to. But it has not yet passed in Congress.
Muy breve. En Argentina tenemos una larga tradición de conversaciones de este tema y tenemos también instituciones que han tenido muchísima experiencia. Me parece que lo mejor es tratar de revisar esas conversaciones y ver qué se puede aprender de la experiencia comparada.
En Costa Rica tenemos un Consejo Nacional de Salarios que fija los aumentos en el sector público, perdón, en el sector privado. Es tripartito, pero generalmente gobierno y empleadores consensuan aumentos mucho menores a los propuestos por los trabajadores, mucho menores a la inflación y poco representativos. En el sector público, para que tengan una idea, se ha decretado un congelamiento salarial por 10 años y congelamiento de las pensiones por 10 años. No habrá aumentos en 10 años. Llevamos 2.
Okay. Any other question? No? So a few words to conclude. Yes, we can conclude. Yes, we have to be on time. So this morning, the Deputy Director of the UNDP Independent Office of Evaluation said we are kind of talking to each other, evaluation people. So here you heard people that are outside that universe. And when you think about it, these are the main actors of the world of work: businesses, workers, trade unions, and of course, the government. So if you have a program, a policy, you're doing an evaluation, and it somehow touches the world of work, it should just be natural to engage in the evaluation process these actors. I say this because often I hear UN colleagues, they refer to NGOs, civil society organizations, try to bring citizens into the evaluation system. But you have in the world of work already institutions that's solid with long history, with large membership that you can engage into evaluation. And SDG 8, as you now discovered through this panel, is the most important SDG. It's at the middle, decent work, and through decent work, we can achieve a lot of the other SDGs. So we hope we convinced you about the importance of engaging our tripartite constituents in national evaluation system. And we hope in the next conference in 2 years, we will be able to monitor this and see if their engagement has improved. So thank you, panelists, Thank you, participants. And